His eyes caught mine in the mirror before I could cover myself, my shirt dangling uselessly from my hand. For a second, neither of us moved. The air between us tightened, thick, heavy, and charged. I could hear my own heartbeat louder than the creak of the door he'd just pushed open. He should have looked away. He didn't. And somehow, I didn't want him to. Disclaimer: this content is intended for mature audiences only. Viewer discretion is advised. The moment Al stepped into our bedroom, everything changed. I'd been halfway through changing out of my work clothes, humming to myself, never expecting him home so early. The late afternoon sunlight spilled across the hardwood floor, catching the soft edges of the mirror where my reflection froze, caught, vulnerable. Al's hand still clutched the doorframe as if he, too, hadn't expected this moment. My shirt slipped from my fingers, pooling silently at my feet, but he didn't move. Didn't blink. And for some reason, that look in his eyes, hesitant, conflicted, but undeniably lingering, made my chest tighten in ways I couldn't name. Al had always been the steady one, my husband of 3 years, the kind who always asked before entering, who respected space to a fault. Which is why the way he stood there now, almost defiant in his stillness, sent a ripple of confusion and heat through me. His lips parted as if to speak, but no words came. His gaze wasn't predatory, not exactly, but it wasn't innocent either. It felt like we had both stumbled into something dangerous, something neither of us could easily step back from. I pulled my cardigan from the bedpost and clutched it against myself, waiting for him to say something, anything. But Al just stared, his jaw tightening like he was holding something back. I'd seen that look before, fleeting, in arguments or late at night when we thought the other was asleep, a flicker of something deeper, something unsaid. But here, with the sunlight tracing across my bare shoulder and his shadow filling the doorway, that flicker felt like a spark waiting to catch. "Al," I finally whispered, my voice sounding smaller than I wanted. The way his name rolled out seemed to snap him out of whatever haze he was in. He blinked, looked away for a second, then back again, as if fighting himself. My stomach knotted. Was this curiosity? Desire? Or something heavier? He took a step forward, slow, deliberate, the wood creaking under his weight, but said nothing. The tension grew unbearable. I couldn't tell if I wanted him to leave or close the space between us. Every second stretched, my breath coming shallow, while Al lingered in that threshold like he wasn't sure what he'd do if he crossed it. And just as I opened my mouth to break the silence, he finally spoke, his voice low, rough around the edges. "Why didn't you lock the door?" His question hung in the air, heavier than anything I'd expected. And in that moment, I wasn't sure if I wanted to answer, or if I even could. Al's question still hung in the air, heavier than either of us could handle. "Why didn't you lock the door?" His voice had carried something more than curiosity, more than irritation. It was a threat of something he wasn't saying, something I wasn't sure I wanted to name. I stood there clutching the cardigan, my knuckles pale, feeling the heat of his gaze even as his eyes briefly dropped to the floor, as if the weight of the moment scared him as much as it did me. The room felt smaller now, tighter. The scent of his cologne still lingered from the morning, a familiar trace that somehow felt sharper now, more invasive. We'd lived here for 2 years, in this quiet corner of Charleston where the late-day sun always painted the house gold, but right now even the light felt different, warmer, heavier, as though it had picked up on the tension coiled between us. I couldn't tell if it was my own nerves, or if Al's chest rising and falling slower than usual was proof that he felt it too. We'd been through so much together already, long nights of him working construction jobs, me pulling double shifts at the cafe, the occasional blow-up fights about bills or schedules that always ended in tired apologies. He'd always been steady, dependable, the kind of man who fixed things before they broke. But as he finally stepped into the room, closing the distance by just a few feet, I realized I didn't know this side of him. The Al who wouldn't break eye contact. The Al who lingered like he wanted something he couldn't, or wouldn't, ask for. I tried to act normal, to let the cardigan fall around my shoulders as if nothing had happened, but my fingers betrayed me. They trembled as I fumbled with the buttons. His eyes flicked toward the movement, and I caught it, that flash of hesitation in him, like he was fighting a thought he wasn't ready to admit. My heart thudded so hard I was sure he could hear it. "Al, are you okay?" I finally asked, trying to keep my voice even. He hesitated before nodding, too slowly, his jaw still tight. Then, without another word, he reached past me for his jacket on the chair, his arm brushing mine. It was the faintest touch, but it sent a jolt through me that left my breath caught in my throat. Neither of us spoke again as he turned to leave, but the tension followed him out the door, clinging to the air like it had claimed the house itself. That night, I couldn't sleep. The house was quiet, the kind of heavy silence that made every creak sound like a confession. Al hadn't said a word about what happened earlier. He'd eaten dinner in near silence, scrolling through his phone, his face unreadable, and I'd pretended to do the same, picking at my food, trying not to look at him too long in case he noticed. But every time his eyes flicked up from the screen, just for a split second, I felt that same jolt from the bedroom, like something had shifted between us and neither of us knew how to name it. I told myself it was nothing. That it was just the surprise of the moment, that awkwardness between two people who'd simply gotten too comfortable with routine. But when I closed my eyes, all I could see was the way he looked at me, not just at me, but through me, like he was trying to understand something about me he'd missed all this time. And worse, the part of me that didn't want him to look away. Around midnight, I gave up on sleep and went downstairs for water. The kitchen was dim, lit only by the faint glow of the streetlight outside. I didn't expect to see Al there, leaning against the counter, his broad shoulders tense, one hand running over his face like he'd been sitting there for a while, lost in thought. He startled when he saw me, his usual calm composure cracked for a second. "You couldn't sleep either?" I asked, my voice softer than I intended. He shook his head, looking past me, then back. His eyes lingered for a beat too long, and my breath caught. I thought he'd brush it off, make some casual comment, but instead he asked, "Did it bother you earlier?" His voice was low, deliberate, like he was testing the weight of the words before he let them fall. I froze. My fingers tightened around the glass. I should have just said yes, played it off as nothing, laughed even. But I didn't. "I don't know," I admitted, almost in a whisper. My heart thudded so loudly in my chest I was sure he could hear it. Al's jaw tightened, and he stepped a little closer, not enough to touch, but close enough that I could feel the warmth radiating off him. He looked at me like he wanted to say something more, but the words never came. Instead, the silence between us grew heavy again, thicker, charged with everything neither of us dared to speak. And then, as if sensing the danger of staying there too long, Al turned and muttered, "I'll see you upstairs," before walking past me, his shoulder brushing mine just enough to leave a trail of heat behind. I stood there in the dim kitchen, gripping my glass, realizing that whatever had shifted between us wasn't going away. It was only getting harder to ignore. The next evening felt different from the moment the sun dipped behind the trees. The air in the house was heavier, as if both of us were holding our breath without realizing it. Al barely spoke during dinner again, his fork scraping against the plate in the kind of rhythm that felt deliberate, tense. Every time our eyes met, one of us looked away too quickly, but neither of us stopped stealing glances. It was as if the space between us had shrunk, even when we sat across the table. Later, I went upstairs to fold laundry, hoping the monotony would steady my thoughts. But as I sat cross-legged on the bed, stacking warm towels, I heard his footsteps on the stairs. Slow, measured. My pulse quickened, the memory of yesterday's tension rushing back so sharply I almost dropped the towel in my hands. He paused at the doorway, watching me for a second before stepping inside without a word. He leaned against the dresser, arms crossed, eyes tracking my every movement. The room felt too quiet, the soft hum of the ceiling fan amplifying the sound of my heartbeat in my ears. I tried to keep my hands busy, but the way he was looking at me, steady, unreadable, and lingering just a little too long, made my breath shallow. When I finally looked up, our eyes locked. Neither of us moved, but everything felt like it was teetering on the edge. He took a small step forward, almost hesitant, like he was testing how far he could go. His voice was low when he finally spoke, rough in a way that made the hairs on my arms stand on end. "Are we okay?" It was such a simple question, but the weight behind it was suffocating. My fingers tightened around the towel in my lap, my throat dry. "I don't know," I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. The silence stretched, thick and electric. He didn't move closer, but he didn't step back either. The golden lamplight painted shadows across his face, softening his expression just enough to make me wonder what he was really thinking. It felt like we were both waiting, for what, I wasn't sure. But I knew whatever happened next, nothing would be the same. Al didn't move for a long time. He just stood there, arms crossed, his shadow stretching across the dresser like a second version of him, darker, heavier. The silence in the room throbbed, each second louder than the last. I couldn't tell if I wanted him to walk out or to come closer. Every part of me felt wired, strung tight, still haunted by the image of his eyes catching mine in the mirror that afternoon, the way they didn't blink, didn't turn away. That memory felt stitched into this moment, like a shadow neither of us could shake. Finally, he broke the silence. "You've been different since yesterday." His voice was low, careful, like he was afraid to push too far but couldn't help himself. He uncrossed his arms, resting one hand on the dresser as he looked at me. "Or maybe I've been different. I don't know." His jaw flexed, and for a moment, I saw something in his face I hadn't seen in years, a flash of rawness, unguarded. I wanted to say something, to fill the heavy space, but the words tangled in my throat. Before I could speak, he stepped closer, each slow footfall sinking into the carpet like it weighed more than it should. My pulse hammered, the towel still clutched in my lap like a shield. He stopped just a few feet away, enough that I could feel the heat coming off him, the quiet weight of his presence pressing against me. Then, the twist, he exhaled and whispered, almost reluctantly, "You left the door unlocked on purpose, didn't you?" The words hit harder than I expected, my breath catching. "What?" "No," I started, my voice too sharp, too quick, betraying the sudden jolt running through me. His eyes narrowed slightly, not in anger, but as if he was trying to read me, to pull the truth from my silence. "I've been thinking about it since it happened. The way you froze, but didn't cover up. The way you looked at me." He paused, his voice softer now, tinged with something like disbelief. "If I'm wrong, tell me." "But I don't think I am." The room felt smaller, the air too thick. My chest tightened, not because of what he accused, but because part of me wasn't sure he was wrong. That second in the mirror, the part of me that didn't want him to look away, burned through my mind, unshakable. Before I could answer, the sound of a car pulling into the driveway shattered the moment. Headlights swept across the blinds, breaking the tension like a snapped string. Al froze, glancing toward the window, then back at me, his expression unreadable now. "Who is that?" he asked, his voice low but edged with something I couldn't quite place. Worry, suspicion, maybe both. The sound of a car door slamming echoed through the evening air, and everything we hadn't said was left hanging in the space between us. The front door creaked open downstairs, breaking the stillness that had wrapped itself around us. I froze, my fingers tightening around the towel, while Al's shoulders stiffened like a coiled spring. The sound of careful footsteps echoed up the stairs, not rushed, not hesitant, but deliberate. My pulse raced, every beat echoing in my ears. Whoever it was, they were coming straight toward us. Then the voice came. "Al? You home?" It was Jason, his younger brother. My breath caught, my thoughts scrambling. Jason wasn't supposed to be here. He lived 2 towns over and rarely visited without calling. Al turned sharply toward the door, his jaw clenched, but before he stepped away, his eyes flicked back to me. For a second, we both stood there in that charged silence, as if deciding whether to acknowledge what had been building between us or to shove it back into the shadows. But then, something in Al's expression shifted. He closed the space between us in 2 strides, his hand brushing mine as he took the towel from my grip and set it aside. His touch lingered, warm and deliberate, sending a wave of heat through me. His voice was low, almost a whisper, carrying the weight of everything we hadn't said. We can't keep pretending this isn't happening. The words settled over me like a spark catching dry leaves. I met his gaze, my breath shallow, and for a moment, nothing existed but that closeness, the memory of the mirror, the brush of his shoulder in the kitchen, the way every glance had felt heavier than it should. It was as if all the tension from the past 2 days had pulled us into this one moment, impossible to ignore. But before I could answer, Jason's footsteps reached the doorway. Al stepped back instinctively, his hand dropping to his side just as Jason appeared, his easy smile faltering when he caught the thick air between us. His eyes flicked from me to Al, lingering a second too long. Al cleared his throat. "Didn't know you were coming by." Jason's gaze stayed on me a moment longer, then shifted back to his brother. "Yeah, figured I'd surprise you." His tone was casual, but there was a glint in his eyes, curious, questioning. The tension between Al and me didn't vanish. It just shifted, folding itself under the surface where it simmered, waiting. Al didn't speak until Jason had gone downstairs to grab a drink, leaving us in the bedroom again, the tension pressing on both of us like a storm cloud. His eyes found mine, softer this time, no longer questioning but certain. "We can't keep letting things sit like this," he murmured, stepping closer. His hand brushed mine again, this time not tentative, but deliberate, grounding. Whatever that moment was, it changed something. For both of us. I swallowed hard, realizing how true that was. The image from the mirror, the way neither of us had looked away, had been following me for 2 days, reshaping how I saw him, how I saw us. It wasn't just about the way he looked at me, it was about what had been missing between us for months. The routine. The distance. That unspoken need we both ignored until it demanded to be seen. I took a breath, feeling the weight of my cardigan against my shoulders like armor I didn't need anymore. "I didn't leave the door unlocked on purpose," I said finally, my voice quiet but steady. "But I didn't want you to look away, either." His jaw relaxed at that, and for the first time in days, I saw the faintest trace of a smile in his eyes, not playful, but relieved, like a knot had finally loosened. He reached up, brushing a strand of hair from my face, his fingers lingering just long enough to make my chest tighten. "Then maybe we needed that, to wake us up," he said softly. The sound of Jason's footsteps on the stairs again pulled us back, but this time, we didn't flinch. We weren't hiding. Whatever shift had happened between us wasn't something to deny anymore, it was something to figure out together. As we left the bedroom side by side, Al's fingers brushed mine one last time, not a grab, not a full hold, but a quiet promise. I glanced at him, seeing the same glint in his eyes as when he first stood frozen in that doorway, only now it wasn't uncertainty. It was a spark. And I realized as we reached the stairs that everything had started with that single moment, him walking in, me frozen in the mirror, neither of us turning away. A moment that could have broken us, but instead reminded us we were still here, still wanting, still alive.